Hello, round two of Heritage Bytes. Excited for another episode here where the one and only rule of Heritage Bytes Club is to bring a snack and to tell everyone why you brought that snack. Again, I'm Rio. I'm the co-founder at Dokai, and my job here really is to shine a light on the awesome culture and the unique perspectives of my guests. And of course, to have them tell us about their career, share their career advice, and also tell us about how they see the potential for technology and AI. And with that, let's get snacking. I cannot wait to introduce my guest here today. I'll let him give some background on how we got to know each other, but he's a role model and mentor, especially when it comes to technology and sales, but also in bringing your true, authentic self to work every single day. From training for the Olympics to now leading a sales team in various communities, he is an inspiration to me and my team. So please welcome Damon. How are you, man?
Hey, Rio, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm excited about the conversation today just because of some of the topics that I think we have planned and even just the idea of snacks. And anytime I get to share folks about what it means like to be Jamaican, I'm excited about that. So thank you.
Before we even get started, snacking is an essential part of Heritage Bites. So before we go any further, let's show them what snacks we brought. And can I quickly tell you about the snack I brought here today?
Oh, let me see what you got, man.
All right. So you told me you were bringing chips. I thought I'd stay on theme. This here is sort of a modern twist to a traditional Indonesian chip called umping. I did not know any of this before this podcast. I just researched it. Apparently, it comes from the Malinjo nuts, which I just found out grows from like small trees. And creating these chips is actually a very labor-intensive process. And traditionally, they're eaten to accompany meals like fried rice or soto, which is a type of Indonesian soup. But what I have here is sort of the snack, sort of the modern snack twist. So it's sweet and spicy, which masks the traditionally slightly bitter taste that it typically has. So I'll open it up and I'll get snacking. But that's a little bit about the Indonesian chips that I have here. Please tell us about the chips that you brought that inspired me to get these chips.
Totally, man. What I have here is they're plantain chips. So if you know, us Jamaicans, we love our fried plantains. These are actually sweet plantain chips. We have salty ones. If you know Jamaicans, there's variations of banana chips is like a big thing for us. And so we actually had a really big banana industry in back in the 90s, even in the early 2000s. And so it's bananas, it's plantains, and a lot of these are just eaten as a snack, right? So if like in between meals, growing up, I used to love bananas and plantain chips. Just you go to the shop nearby and you get some, and it's like a really good. The banana chips are mainly salty. This one has a variation of sweet. And as you can imagine, we're in America now, but it's one of the few things as I've traveled to different states, I've been able to say, hey, I need to hold on to these small pieces that reminds me of home. So this is one of the cool things that I actually buy it probably at least weekly. It's one of the chips I must have. And you know, it's like, you think it's healthy. I throw that out the roll. It's just like a big reminder of like what it means to be at home, you know?
I love how anywhere you are in the world, people would see different plants and stuff growing from the ground and just think, let's turn these into chips. There's just something about the crunch, you know, the texture. But describe the taste, man. How's that first bite?
Yeah, so the country is, as you mentioned, crunchy. This one is sweet, so it has like sprinkles of sugar on it. There are other variations that are salty. And it really just depends on what you're feeling for. It's like a good snack that you're feeling for something sweet. It's kind of some sort of filling. It's really good. And it's like in that family of, I mean, if you had like fried plantains, I really love fried plantains as well. So like anything with plantain, I'm just like, yes, give it to me, you know? So I love that fruit. And so, yeah, this one is like really crunchy and really nice. And it's like a really good light snack to just have sometime throughout the day when you're just feeling for something different, you know?
I love it. Is this a snack that you ate growing up?
It is. Like I mentioned, you would often have it, you know, I remember in high school or earlier, just like you this would be one of the breaks in high school that you're eating something like this, or slightly right after school, and you just like a quick snack. It's just something like that. It's one of the many snacks that we had. So yeah, I've been able to hold on to one of the many things I've been able to hold on to on my culture, and I was happy that I was able to get it here in a different store per se here.
Love it. Speaking of growing up, tell us about where you grew up.
Yeah, so it's I like to tell folks I'm from Jamaica, and so it depends on who you ask. The overall population is about 3.5 mil. I tell that to people, and they're like, "No way." So it's not a big country, and those numbers change all the time. But I grew up very rural in Jamaica. It's one of we have 14 what we call parishes, so it's imagine states, and one of them was called Trelawney, where most people, if you know Montego Bay. Where I grew up probably is about 30 minutes or so from Montego Bay, 30-45 minutes. And as I'm talking about plantains, like as you can imagine in the background or in my yard, we have plantain trees, we have banana trees, we have all the fruits that are there, lush greenery, great mountains. I have pigs in my backyard. I have we're raising chickens. We have apple, pear, like all that's good that's there. And so just really humble beginnings. And we talked about, I was there back in November, and just like remembering just being there and just the simpler times in life, I like to say.
I love that. I'd love for you to also share, were there parts of your culture and heritage, from growing up in that part of Jamaica that really shaped who you are today?
I would say a lot, right? And so there is not only the culture and heritage, there's something, I'm an only child. And so it's interesting when you're an only child, we talk about family in Jamaica a lot. And depending on the culture, I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's a newer problem that people move out after a certain age. So I think about when I go back home right now, my grandma lives there. My mom lives there. My uncles live there. There's cousins there. And we have this property where we have like 2 houses there, multiple family members. So it's really this like communal thing. And so when you're growing up, you're not just raised by one, like, mom, dad, kid. Grandparents are there. Cousins are there. Uncles and aunts are there. And so we joke about like, you didn't have to worry about childcare. So that's one of the things that was interesting to me of like, what does it mean to live in this communal atmosphere versus just, when we're now in cities, it's this idea that like we aren't around anyone. So that was the first thing that really was interesting to me of like how you do things for the family, and this idea that you're not going against the norm. You're trying to make the family proud. That was interesting to me. It's another interesting thing growing up. I am in my 30s. And for different people, based on where you grow up, that might mean something different. But it meant that we didn't grow up with internet. We didn't have cell phones. And maybe until around 12, I didn't know, like we didn't have full access to the internet and stuff like that. And so that was an interesting thing where I was outside playing a lot during that time. Blessing and a curse, depending on how you ask. But I think it worked out in my favor. I played a lot by myself. So that I think played a lot into how I show up today, because being an only child, I wasn't, I was never bored. Like it was never an issue that I was bored. And so I had a lot of time by myself. I liked to play by myself. I was outside a lot. The family was there. And there was this deep communal atmosphere. And, you talk about even the food. I never thought that like, I didn't have the food that I needed. Like there was good, healthy food. And I can go into so much more about like what it meant to like eat from the ground and the things that you grow, and the hormones that comes in your food. And so there was this like just deep blessing. I felt so blessed and just honored to be in a place where I didn't even think about that. Like there was this crazy world out there. It was just, that was home, and that it will always be home,
Sounded like you were surrounded by a lot of family members, even animals in the backyard. I mean, who needed internet back then? There was so much going on.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate. I had slow internet growing up. I think Friendster and MySpace might have been my first foray into the internet. I don't know if you remember those older sort of social media platforms, man.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. I didn't even get on those. That was a crazy piece. I was I think I had Messenger, MSN Messenger, and
Yep.
even then, right until college. It wasn't until college that I got back then we had like BBM Messenger, right? So that was the thing up until college. So as I said, being able to be in a place where I wasn't too distracted. I know that's not the case today, but it was like a really helpful time that enabled me to read a lot. I didn't watch a lot of TV growing up. And then I also got into sports because of that. So a lot of things flow into that.
Perfect segue into one of the many fun facts about you, which is that you trained for the Olympics. You trained for the freaking Olympics, man. How was that? Tell us about that experience.
Yeah. So I always think about the training for Olympics, just an amazing time, right? You not it is such a privilege. There's a selected people in the world, like this idea of like trying to be the best. There's obviously like this higher level people who make it to the Olympics, but there's also this like selected group that who even feel that they can make it happen and actually, get to this next level. Um, and at the time when I was starting to make that decision, it was like a push and a pull. I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit, but after graduating college, I had to decide what am I going to do with my life after this graduation, and one of them was this idea of do I want to stay in this country? Is this a place that I want to continue? Not only do I want to, but am I able to? When we talk about visas and all that great stuff. And then there was this opportunity, and it's like one of my themes in life is that there is more. Whereas this, like, I felt that coming out of college, I had more in the tank. I felt like I was an okay college athlete, but I said, what would happen if I was in this very high performing atmosphere? I imagine how much more that I could become. And so those are some of the things I was really working towards. And I was super blessed to be around a group of some of the most talented people in the world. We have world record holders, we have Olympic medalists, world championships, and just seeing what very high performance look like. I think that has forever changed me in the person I am today in sales, in the work world, and just to be a part of that and being able to take part of that and say like I was in that. Probably a spoiler for people, I didn't make it to the Olympics, but it was a great ride, and I felt really like impressed with myself that one, I was able to walk away from the sport. I left feeling pleased with the work that I put in.
That's awesome. I only have respect for people like you who had to go through all of that training. I started running a lot more recently, started training for maybe, let's see if I could do a half marathon. And oh man, like it's not easy waking up early in the morning, forcing yourself, whether you feel like it or not, to run out there. Well, now it's in the cold because it's this sort of, the time of the year. But tell us about training and how brutal that was, or maybe it was enjoyable. I don't know. How was that? And what did training for the Olympics teach you?
Yeah, the interesting thing, like you mentioned, the people always say, like, do something that you love. You never work a day in your life, like debatable. But I recall, I don't remember I don't recall that there were mornings that I woke up that I didn't feel like going to the track. Average day, we would get up, get to the track by 8:39. By maybe, midday or so, we're finishing up, heading to the gym. And so we're home by like 1:32, and then, nap, recover. Some people might have, different things they're doing, but we're back the next day. So think about it from like you're fully invested from like a 9 to 2, you're out there. And I think the physical load, if you're at that stage, most people can't handle the physical load. Where it really gets tricky is the mental aspects of things where you've hit a plateau and you're trying to work through like, why am I not performing the way that I want to? Or maybe you picked up a nittle, like you have an ankle injury, like it's frustrating that it's not going the way you want. And so a lot of it came down to the mental aspects of things, because I think if you're at that level trying to get to the Olympics, you've seen something with you physically that you can make it happen. So you're not breaking, like people are breaking barriers physically, but a lot of things comes down to how do you sustain that over time, and then how do you bring the mental game in it? And you couple that with, I would like to say, where I was deeply semi-professional, where it's not like I had sponsors per se. I still had a side job. I had some small sponsorship to help with some bills, but nothing crazy. So that means is if you're not having this multiple sponsor, you're still having to figure out like I still do have bills to pay. Like this is still not the thing that is paying all my bills and I'm able to live comfortably. So in one hand, that's really great because you have something you're pursuing and you have something to live for. There's something on the line and it really means something. But then the other hand, there's this mental toll that like, hey, I could use this extra 2 hours and that, but maybe I have to go, like I was a personal trainer at the time. Maybe I have to go to the gym and make this money as well. So there is this deep sacrifice that you're making. And so, man, it was really fun. And it was like, obviously you're young. And so I tell people do it while you're young. I had nothing holding me back. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have a kids at the time. And so there's nothing, it was just a pure bliss of pursuit there. But the biggest thing was the mental game to how do you stay consistent when things are not going your way or the money is not coming in or the performance that you want isn't where you need to be. So that, man, I learned so much from like, playing the game there of like, what does it mean to be truly have mental fortitude, along the way.
Sounds like time management, discipline, all the important values happened during that period. And were you away from your family in Jamaica during that training period?
Yeah, so the camp we had was in Phoenix, Arizona. So this is my first time in Arizona, and yeah, I lived there for 3.5, 4 years, and interesting weather, but a great place to, you're young. The prices are fairly reasonable for housing, and we had a good group of people there. So it was, if you know it from Jamaica, it wasn't a straight shot, so we still had to. If I wanted to go home, it was like maybe you get a flight to Miami and then to Montego Bay of some sort,
Wow. And so was that when you moved to the States during that period?
No, so I came here for college. So that training period was after college. I came here for college. I was in college in Princeton, in Jersey. Completely different weather than Phoenix. So that was cold, and Jersey was an interesting place. And so it was right after college, there was this decision that, what is it that I want? What is it I want to pursue? And then there was this other thing that was interesting. I'm going to tie it back to what I talk about, this communal thing. I felt, yes, going to college was amazing. I was a chemistry major, and I enjoyed parts of that. But there was an awakening towards the latter part of college where it was like, felt like I was doing this for my family and my parents. And I felt like I was able to give that to them. Like, hey, I graduated college. I'm fairly debt free. That's amazing. Now, what is it that I want? Can I pursue something for myself, even if it comes at disappointing them a little bit? So that was an interesting like transition there of being able to pursue something that felt deeply rooted for me, because my entire life there was this I could say it was contingent. It was, especially in high school, hey, you can do track as long as the grades are well, so there was this hand in hand. I like to think about it like being really good at getting A's, but also being good at the track, and they were contingent on each other. And so it was the first time in my life I felt like I was choosing something that I wanted versus, doing something for someone else.
Wow. That's beautiful. And going from the track to Princeton, studying chemistry, and now you're leading a sales team at Assembled. So I guess first off, tell us about Assembled and also, of course, about your role there.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do here at Assembled is what we call modernizing the call center. So if anyone's been you call your bank or whatever, and it says, hey, this call would be recorded for performance services, or you've been on hold. What we're really trying to do is understand, like, hey, at a certain bank or at a certain, call center, there's certain calls coming in, and we want to make sure that, your call is answered in the best time possible. So we have these amazing, like, suite of software that understands, projected incoming calls, to ensure that you're not on hold for a long time, and you get the best service in the best way possible. So we're really trying to be in that call center, what we call a support operations. We're trying to be, handle and give people like a good view of all of that. And if anyone knows about sales, right, the idea is that And a lot of people build companies and not necessarily build it and they'll come. So our job as a sales team is to go out there and figure out, who are all the call centers or who are all the companies that are building or want to build amazing customer experience that don't know about us, that should know about us. And so I'm blessed to be able to have this opportunity to lead a team to continue that. And one of the cool things about it is, everyone has had this issue. So when we explain it to people, they're like, okay, I get exactly, it's not an esoteric, non-thing that you can't touch, intangible that that you can't grasp. It's like when we explain the problem to people, is that people want to be a part of that because, they feel like what they're doing is contributing to the greater good, of sort. We're not saving lives, but it's definitely something that they can pinpoint and say, I helped to improve the customer experience here.
I feel like you're being humble. What I can tell the people is that your team's absolutely killing it. You're doing amazing things there at Assembled. And my question to you is, we've talked about your culture and your heritage. Do you bring that to work in any way? Are there values that guide how you lead your team and how you collaborate at work?
Yeah, there's a lot of, and I'll tell people I didn't build this, this isn't just a 6 months me or a 5 months. This has been years in the making, right? So, I just pulled this up. This was like unplanned, but I have this sticky on my, it's kind of hard for folks to see, but it's like, what are my 3 core values? One of them is connection, courage, and curiosity, right? And so I'm always thinking about every year or every 6 months, I come back to these because different times of the season calls for different things. And so there was this inflection point, I think 4 years ago when it really hit me that I was questioning who am I becoming, and then whose version of success that I was following, right? And so when you show up to work, there are rules and there's principles for work. And if you're not careful, you'll fall into that trap. So an example is like, what does it mean to be confident, or what does it mean to be, smart? And so there's this variation of like different people have different ideas of what that looks like. And so the prime example I use is the person that might talk the loudest. They might come across as the smartest or the most confident. And we know that, studies have shown that's oftentimes not the case. If you're an introvert, you might have like deep, things within you that you're willing to get out. And so over time, I started to realize, wait, like what is celebrated might not be how I feel, because I might be an introvert. Or like an example I use is I always tell people like, hey, I need some time to answer this question. Can you give me a day? And that wasn't unheard of. Or the other thing is I felt really like I had this intuition, but intuition didn't really pan out in the boardroom. So if I go to my CEO and says, my intuition or my gut says like this isn't the right decision, they would want numbers behind it. And so I believe that a lot of stuff was cultural for me, like having deep intuition and feeling like something is off, but I couldn't really, I didn't have the words for that. And so over years, I've built up this, try to communicate the things that are uniquely me, while understanding like, what are the rules that I need to abide by? So when I think about my team, we call it a performance-driven mindset because number one, we do have hard metrics to hit. Now, the thing that as I really enjoy, I've seen it. I don't know if you've thought about this, Rhea, but this idea of like, I consider myself a third culture person, where it is, I come from Jamaica, and I've lived here for now, it's been 14 years, right? In and out. And so there's this idea that at 34, been here so it's 20 years, 20 years in Jamaica, 14 years here. There's just like interest in overlap where when I go back, I have culture shock. But when I'm here, I still don't feel like I fit in. So I have this unique view of, I'm still questioning things when I'm driving down the road. I was like, why do you all do that? And so as a result of that, I've used that as a superpower. Because now when I step into the boardroom, I'm like, I'm different. The way I approach things is different. It's not that I'm any less. It's just that I'm different. So one of the core things that I've been able to instill in my team is that, hey, we're going to set goals. And we're going to think about these goals. But I know that you're a different person. So the way that you might achieve these goals, like it might be different from the way I might achieve them. So can I create this like swim lane for folks of saying, hey, we still need to stay in these lines, but the way that you might do it might be slightly different. So, Bob might be different from Mary, but we're still going towards the same goal. And I think that has really liberated my team, because I'm not putting them in a box. I'm not saying, hey, you have to speak this way, you have to dress this way, you have to write this way. And so now they're feeling liberated. And that's been, I think, one of the core piece of what I do that like makes people successful. It's harder, and oftentimes not the, it might take a little bit longer, because depending on who you are, people show up and say, just tell me what to do, and I'm hating it, versus saying, hey, help me to understand what's uniquely me, so then I can become the best version of me, versus, a lot of leaders out there try to make their team mini versions of themselves, versus saying like, what are the core competencies that we want to have, and what does that look like individually for that person? So lots of work. I'm still ongoing, but so far it's been working great. And so I'm hoping that other people, I think there's a trend that's going to start to move towards there,
I love your points on, bringing your true authentic self and competencies to the workplace. I'd love to ask you, have you ever faced, personally, challenges balancing your cultural identity with professional expectations? And how did you navigate through those moments?
Yeah, I think that it really came to there. We mentioned, I think it was about 4 years ago, when we talk about like me coming to this idea of whose version of success am I pursuing. And the background is, my family's there, and so when they need something, they'll call on me. And so there's this I'm still deeply connected to my family there. It's something that I feel privileged that I'm able to help out as much as possible, right? And so there's this idea of like, there's no version of my success that doesn't include them. What I've realized, it's not the same here, depending on who you are, how you grew up in America. And so if you grew up in America, depending on who you are, I think there's a lot of people who, you've been given, I think it's a privilege as well to be able to say, hey, go on, do your own thing, move out. You never have to worry about helping out your family member because your family is there, right? We're first generation here, and it's like, it's a completely different burden that we have to bear. And so at a certain point, I felt like I was pursuing I was overlooking the fact that I was first generation, and I'm still deeply tied to my family back home. And so I just remember people thinking, we were talking about certain goals, and it's just like, whoa, this is not me, right? And I had to be careful because, as I said, we're in sales, we have commissions, we have money to make. While there's great peace, it's like it's part of that was, do I like a very I would say tangible piece of that is, should I care about equity or should I care about cash, right? And what we don't talk about, like, and I very rarely hear anyone talk about that, like, depending on who you are, like, equity is being able to leverage more equity is a privilege, to say, hey, I'm willing to take this and wait 8 to 10 years to see a return, versus, okay, I have a family now that I need a bit more cash. And if you're not understanding where I come from, you won't be able to understand my motivations. I think a lot of what I've gone through over the last 4 years is this idea of leaders who, whether I've worked on or beyond or side by side, it's like they think I don't get a sense that they care about the background, what motivates me, and like just where I'm coming from. And there's this nuance that I can share that I've experienced where, obviously, I'm a Black man, and generally, if you don't know, like, for some people, they know there's an accent, they don't know where, and so they just assume African American, that I grew up here, versus like, no, I am like, I'm actually Jamaican, and so yes, I'm Black, but it's like the things that makes me different is not necessarily that I'm a Black man in America. It's more so that I'm Jamaican. I think that comes up a lot more than not. And so I think a lot of my professional, like, butting heads come from people not fully getting to, like, they think they just bucket me in this African American bucket, versus like, no, you're Jamaican, your motivations are different, or like this. It oftentimes comes up where it's like, I think I'm generally more deeply, I care more about connection. So in my meetings, I'm more, how are you doing? How's the family? Let me understand what makes you tick. And a lot of people are more like, go, metrics, let's get there. And they don't also realize that I have a deep intrinsic motivation for mastery, which is something that I've always had my whole life. So, them trying to motivate me with money, like, which is oftentimes great. I love to be awarded for my work, but the thing that pushes me is like deep mastery and becoming one of the best there is, despite like there's a lot of stuff I would do without the money. But when you don't get that, we oftentimes have butting heads in the boardroom because you think I'm here for a different reason. So a lot of it is just culturally that I'm so deeply wanting connection and can pursue my curiosity. But most people don't often, come to the table with that piece.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's the perfect example of bringing something that's culturally important to you, deeply caring about your community, your family, and then bringing that into sales and using it as a way for you to genuinely connect and interact with prospects, customers, those around you. How did you ultimately break into software sales?
Yeah, it's a good question because I actually hire people right now who are trying to make the transition. And so I see that a lot. At the time when I realized that I might want to transition from track and field, I'm looking at my core values. One of them is curiosity. And there was this, I was in Phoenix at the time, and I remember I was in Phoenix and I was driving Uber actually, doing food delivery. I was doing food deliveries, and I there's a part of me that enjoyed it because I had time to listen to podcasts, like as many podcasts as I wanted. And that was it. I started listening to all these tech startup podcasts. I was hearing the stories of the Ubers of the world. And I was like, wow, like this is really cool, right? Like I knew that I wanted to be a part of a team. I knew I still wanted to pursue something. I was goal-oriented. And being able to listen to podcasts was an amazing thing, like an amazing intro. And then I remember there was these like small startup scenes in Phoenix that I was like, oh, let me go check this out. So that was where it started off, just like being genuinely interested, number one, but now learning the lingo of like, what is even equity? What does this even look like? And so starting to learn the lingo. And the reason that's important, because when I interview folks today, it's obvious they don't even know what is the job to be done. Like what do you actually like it's not just about making money. It's like understanding like, what are the ups? What are the downs? There's tons of stuff on Udemy, like go to YouTube. So that's the first thing. And then there's this thing about just like going to figure out where, luckily I was building up a network over a period of time. So it was not only understanding who's working where, but be able to say, hey, you went to Princeton. I saw you're working at this tech company. Do you mind if we chat? Or, hey, you're Jamaican, or, hey, we're connected. Can you chat? And then there's this third piece where, because people might say like, hey, you had a chemistry degree. So I had a chemistry degree, graduated. I hadn't done anything professional fully in like 3 years. So I was like, what next? I was like, hey, let me go take an internship. I took an internship and I did a marketing internship. So I was like, hey, let me go learn some more lingo there. It was like 10 hours a week, so nothing crazy. And then it was interesting. I was working, it was like a commission-based recruiting. I did that also internship. So didn't really get paid much, but it was this understanding of cold outreach. So those are when we start to think about what are the transferable skills. So I knew the industry lingo. I had this marketing, at a base. And, if you know anything about recruiting, a lot of that is like transferable to sales. And then when I felt like I had a good base, I started reaching out to folks to see like, hey, I saw you're hiring. What do you want to do? The thing that it's different now than it was, I guess, 8 to 10 years ago. But what I really did was I made up my mind that I would, I just wanted to get in. And so I had the opportunity to join a 10-person startup. And I remember like, now that I look back, like all my comp plans and all of that, I just wanted to get in. And we didn't have it all fully figured out. I was like, listen, I'm not even going to negotiate. I'm willing to take whatever you give me an opportunity. I will come in, and within a year and a half, I'm going to obviously ask for a raise, but let me go prove myself. Obviously I had nothing to lose because, I was making 25 grand a year from track. And so anything above that would have been like even more a blessing for me. But as I said, I understand not everyone had it. That's just the way I made the transition. But some of the transferable things from that is, number one, you got to know the lingo. You got to talk to people. You got to understand what's there. What are some internships can you do to make sure, maybe even for free, to say like learn maybe for 3 months to learn like what is this like, get it on your resume. And then the last piece, you have to start reaching out to people who like you might be connected with, reach out to people that you never know. And so building that network over a period of 6 to 9 months is always really helpful.
I love that. I can definitely relate because my first job, I didn't study chemistry, but my first job was actually at Pfizer right out of college. And it was in a small town in Connecticut. And I knew back then I wanted to be in software sales. So I knew I just had to move to San Francisco. And kind of like you, I went out, got to meet as many people as possible that are in software sales or even engineers or product managers. I talked to as many of them as possible, learned the lingo. And I think it's so important to continue to stay in touch with, whatever's cutting edge, all the different innovations and things that are going on in this crazy, fast changing tech world.
Yeah.
And speaking of fast changing, rapidly changing tech, right? For our final topic, I'd love to quickly touch on AI, its potential in your eyes, such as, whether it's automations or anything really. Dokai, the company I founded, we specialize in making automations, not just easy, but also accurate. And I know you, Damon, you've explored various types of AIs and automations. You continue to stay in touch with everything that's cutting edge, especially for the various use cases that you and your sales team would have. So I'd love to ask you, what are some elements, of your and your team's work or even specific workflows that you wish could be automated, man?
Yeah. That's helpful. Man, I've been thinking about this from actually since I got into tech. I was like, man, like there must be an easier way. So I'm excited about the prospects of stuff. I think that we're in this, I always think about it's like, the crawl, walk, run. I think we're still in this crawl stage, and I think it's going to accelerate crazy. I'll speak for myself. Some of the things that we're already starting to automate, and I'm more excited to go about. It's typically phased out. So phase one is we're lucky that we started 2018, so we've been around for in startup years slightly longer than some people, and we've been doing fairly well. But what is really helpful is, I said, I'll speak specifically for us, is we have a pretty good understanding of what our what we call ideal customer profile is. The reason why I'm excited about that is because now it's more of okay, if we know who we work well with, like the people who consistently buy our software, and when we go up against competitors, we consistently win. If we know that, and I can write that down and like codify that, then it's like, could I go automate or say, hey, here's who we work with well. Is there a way to find all the companies that fits this criteria? So that's one of the first big buckets that I'm excited, and we've already started some stuff there. The second piece is, we sell to people, obviously. So there's this idea that we know who the titles are within those particular companies as well. Could we help to source those people? So that's the other thing. And then the third piece is, it's like two parts. The third piece is, what does the outreach looks like? And the outreach could be, number one is compile of like, what do we say to them? And then how do we get in touch with them? And so what do we say to them is this understanding of building almost a pain metrics. If you think about doctors, when they diagnose, I'm able to come to you, Rio, and says, hey, you fall on this end of the spectrum based on all the accounts that we've worked with, all the deals that we've won. We know this, that you probably have this issue. So it's like this inference model that we can build and send them a just-in-time message for that. We don't even have to like do any deep personalization, like, hey, Rio, we know that you're in San Francisco, unless it matters. But it's like, hey, you have these three things. Based on these three things, you can infer that this is an issue for you. Let's chat. And then the part of the third piece is like, how do we make sure that we're doing that in a timely manner, whether it's different based on the channels? So is it LinkedIn? Is it email? Is it cold call? How do we make that easy? So those three buckets are what we've been playing around with. And I see lots of opportunity there for certain companies, not just myself.
No, I love that. Definitely not just yourself. We've had a lot of discussions with other sales leaders, and it's going to be a big year, 2025. There's going to be a lot happening. There's a lot already happening. And I think a lot of what you just mentioned, those are also priorities that other sales teams have as well. And in our role, in our world of technology, I think it's important for us to be dreamers as well, to
Yeah.
continue innovating and pushing what's possible. So, last question for you is if you could envision a dream tool or software, it could be for you, could be for your sales team, could be general as well. What would that be? And, what would it be for?
Yeah, I think the dream tool for me is one of the things I'm really excited about is there's a world where maybe 6 years ago the easiest way to grow your sales team was just hire more folks. Um, and I think we're now at this age where everyone thinks about how do we become more efficient, and it's the thing that I'm excited about is how do we enable our existing team to become more efficient and not necessarily hire more folks. And so another way of thinking about like how do we increase the capacity of what we already have. Um, and so we talked about those three areas. And so my ideal tool is something that goes potentially, it's not just the basic, hey, find these websites and tell me if this thing is there. It's okay, can we bring in 3 or 4 data points? And based on what the model we've made, we found this account, but we also found 3 other data points, and we're making this compilation of why we believe that this is good. And we're making a suggestion of we should go after them or not, or they're not ready or not. And so some people call it Copilot, but it's like a true end-to-end Copilot that increases the capacity of our team right now without having head count. And I think because at the end of the day, you can only get so much, right, out of a human, and we get sick. Humans get sick. We have off days on the phone. The cool thing, and this might sound weird to some people, but, the AI doesn't get sick, And so what might it look like to show up each day and have a level of consistency? So I'm excited about building something end-to-end that sort of mimics our flow. But at the end of the day, the goal is to how do we increase the capacity of the team that we already have? I think that's what I'm really excited about building out. I know Dokai has some really cool stuff that helps with that. And the thing that excites me about Dokai, it goes beyond the low level. I call it tier 1. Tier 1 is just go to LinkedIn and find here's a title. I think a tool like Dokai for me, where it excites me, is the second order. Hey, find this title, then also come back into our CRM and check to see if it's been reached out before. Also, can you check 6 Sense and making sure that they haven't shown any interest or not? Can you check to see past experiences? And so like this second order, what we call matching and workflow, I'm excited about because I think a lot of people are still in that tier 1. I think a tool like Dokai takes it a step further. And then really gets to the where we want it to be.
Thank you for that wonderful explanation of Dokai as well. I appreciate it. But hey, Damon, you are an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing about your culture, your heritage, your background, where you are now. You're definitely killing it, man. Keep it going. Excited to continue partnering with you. And please visit us here in San Francisco. We'll also come out to the South and hang out as well at some point this year, I hope. But it's been a pleasure, man. And I guess in closing, I know that you've got some stuff going on your socials as well. Please tell the people where they can find you on socials, where they can find your content and, who should be reaching out to you.
Yeah. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I do share quite a bit there. And a lot of it, I don't know how some people do it, but a lot of it is just, I'm going for a walk. I was like, hey, I thought, I'm now privileged to be in this position that, I've learned some stuff. And the more I share, the more, people, what we call, or purpose-driven, people who are thinking about how to be more authentic. A lot of my content is around that and just sharing stuff that I've learned. So hopefully it inspires others. We're constantly hiring. So if you're an SDR in the Bay, please reach out. We have AE positions as well. And yeah, like just overall, if you are, I always think about first gen, or people are purpose driven, people want to think about how to be more authentic in their lives. Love to connect and just have great conversations with folks.
Thank you so much, Damon. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, bro.